I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Hornady Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Seth, and today I have Marketeer Preston Lentfer, Project Engineer Miles Neville. Guys, thanks for coming on the Hornady Podcast.
Morning.
Couldn't be more honored.
Honored, yeah. Well, it's nice to have Preston.
Yeah, I have to be here anyway.
Yeah, but it's nice to have you on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, they're running themselves right now.
Yeah, there's not. I've looked to the chair. There's nobody even there.
Yeah, nobody to look at, nobody to critique, nobody to give you disapproving looks when you say something slightly off.
Yep, that's true. And also nobody to look up random stuff on the show like Jamie.
Correct. Yeah, well, we'll get there.
Yeah. Miles, it's nice to have you back on the show. You were desperately missed. We did an episode with Jeff Seward, longtime friend of Hornady, amazing ballistic engineer coming back through town. Did a good show about gain twist barrels and muzzle tuners and devices and propellants and all kinds of stuff. And the comment section on that video let us know that you were missed. And Jeff himself said that he wished you were there.
Well, there's finally someone.
Yeah. Well, the internet likes your what you have to offer, especially in the precision rifle stuff. And we need to get another T-shirt thing going on for In Miles We Trust. Because I saw that in the comments a couple times.
John will love that.
John, we see you. We see you, buddy.
Yep. All right.
But we do need to have, I have formulated a test for Miles to do, and he hasn't had the time to do it quite yet. But so that'd be a good opportunity if Jeff comes back through. We can do maybe some
barrel tuners
more talk about
2.
Barrel tuners.
Well, it'll be part 3 at this point.
Well,
we dabbled.
Yeah.
2.5.
Yeah, this would be like a 2.5.
Like the
test,
Naked Gun series, like 2.3 in the third.
I just love those movies. That probably yours too, but I know for my sense of humor, those Naked Gun movies really scratch an itch that I enjoy.
Leslie Nielsen was the best.
Yeah, classic. All right. Well, Miles, the internet loves your commentary on all things precision rifle, and for good reason. You bring a systematic and methodical approach to testing theories, flushing out dogma and myths using statistically significant testing samples, and you have at your fingertips an accuracy laboratory, a full machine shop, a computer machine that has SolidWorks and the Google button and all kinds of other stuff. And
a few cases, a few bullets.
Yeah, you got cartridges, you've got powder, propellants, primers, a pressure and velocity laboratory. You got all these tools to do all this cool research and development. We love that you're doing that. But today, we're doing the opposite.
Somebody else did this work.
Great work.
Long time ago.
Those that follow the podcast probably know you're a disciple of the gun, if you will. And you transcend niches. It's not just precision rifle. You're a historian. You're a military firearm enthusiast, all things firearms, going back clear, obviously into the 1700s, 1800s, and then to present day precision rifle race gun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I like to have you on for something like this, where we talk about the illustrious 30-30 Winchester.
That's old school. But that doesn't look that old.
That's not that old right there.
No.
That's, your Marlin right there looking sharp.
They're still doing it.
Yeah, I have one. It's fantastic. One of the new Ruger Marlins. Holy cow.
You have an optic on yours.
I do. Yep. I've got a 1-5 Leupold on there.
Folks back in the day
Probably didn't. But
put an old Winchester A5 on there.
Do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Because they didn't need it. And the 30-30 Winchester at the time, so incredibly cutting edge. And then it has stood the test of time indefinitely and will continue in perpetuity to be a very viable, useful cartridge. We've got lines of ammunition, which we'll talk about, like our LeverEvolution, for example, that breathe some new life into this cartridge. You've got firearm manufacturers all over the place coming out with new lever actions right now, and it's so supported, and it's still so useful.
Yeah.
It's not lost its purpose.
Yeah. No, there's a few cartridges out there. I mean, like 30-06, 270, 22 250, 30-30. Like it's in that ring of stuff that it just will never go away.
Yep.
In our
Yeah,
lifetime.
and this one easily above, I would say, the rest of them because of its popularity and lever actions.
Yeah.
And
sure.
it being
The
as
most
old
common,
as
yeah.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
what-
1895.
Yeah.
They come out with it. They
Yeah.
came out with it for the Winchester model 1894.
now that's going back. Now, you mentioned two of the most iconic things.
That's
in-
a few centuries ago.
Yeah, right.
Thinking about it.
That's a few grandpas
Yeah.
ago. But you've got the 30-30 Winchester, and then you've got the iconic Winchester Model 94. I mean, that is just match made in heaven. And from 1895 at the time, clear to present day, that thing will knock down deer like nobody's business with a classic 150 grain spire point load.
Among other things.
Well, many other things, true,
Yeah,
but
like,
its popularity in the eastern half of the United States solidified because you want to shoot a black bear? Great. You want to shoot a white-tailed deer in the trees? Great. And then one of the things that I think is really cool when we'll kind of stop rambling, we'll kind of get into an approach to the 30-30 going back into the history and the development is the fact that it was such a air quote flat shooting cartridge for those medium-sized game animals like deer, pronghorn, black bear. And, fast forward a bunch of years, right? You century and a quarter, like you've got ultra flat shooting. You've got things like 300 PRC, 6.5 PRC, 6 Creed.
22 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
You're talking flat.
Yeah, flat as a pancake. 220 Swift. You've got all these flat shooters. But for the medium game hunter, this was effective. And one of the things that I think aided its popularity over the centuries, going from, the turn of the century in the 1900s, clear up into the 50s and then beyond, really, is the fact that it was chambered in firearms that were quick handling, short, versatile. You think about a carbine length lever action gun. Those things are compact, they're short, they're light. There's not a ton of recoil. Well, who wouldn't want to carry one of those? I'd go
If I
home
had
with
to
it.
put on my historian hat, I would say in 1895, there weren't a lot of cars.
No,
right?
nope.
So they're probably riding horses, and they had a scabbard right here
Like John Wayne.
and a little carbine
Fit right in
come
there.
right out of it
Yep.
real fast.
Yep. I prefer to concealed carry my 30-30 carbine right here on the
You
appendix.
do have long legs.
No. All right. So to go back, Preston, you mentioned the 1894 launch of Winchester and the cartridge
1895 launch for the
for
94.
the 94.
Yep.
The cartridge originally named not the 30-30, but the 30 Winchester centerfire. So the 30 WCF, and you can still find some guns out there
Sure.
that are stamped 30 WCF. And around that same time, you had kind of its first child, if you will, the 25-35.
Yeah, pretty much immediately. But
Yeah.
I think the big thing for it at the time was that it was the first cartridge really designed for smokeless powder.
Commercial.
Commercial.
commercial,
yeah.
Until then, it was all loaded with black powder.
Mhm.
It's kind of crazy to
Cordite.
think about.
So I think
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
1886, the 8mm LaBelle.
The 8 LaBelle, yep.
Gets credit for being the first
The first.
smokeless military cartridge, I guess.
Yeah, but this was to go to the general store and you
Right.
could buy
Yeah,
ammo.
you could get one or order it, and they'd have it for you next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, and your fop hair pomade. But that is an important and very significant thing in the history of cartridge evolution is purpose-built and designed so that the end user around the country could get ammo with smokeless propellant and all of the benefits that come with smokeless propellant.
Right.
Better ignition characteristics, temperature stability, doesn't degrade as fast, isn't corrosive inside your barrel, really good accuracy, all great things. And coincidentally, the name 30 WCF was maybe a little off-putting for some other gun manufacturers, say Marlin with their 336. They wouldn't necessarily want to chamber a cartridge called the WCF. And as it were, the name kind of slowly changed to the 30-30.
Redefining varmint hunting and target shooting. The Hornady ELD VT. ELD VT bullets feature the heat shield tip, which resists the effects of aerodynamic heating. The lead core has been moved rearward, producing enhanced in-flight stability. AMP bullet jackets are used to ensure every ELD VT bullet performs at its peak potential. The dual-purpose bullet for varmint and target shooting. ELD VT bullets from Hornady.
Yep, and that's just to designate, and it's kind of an homage to how cartridges were named when they were using black powder and cordite. So 30, the latter part of the 30 designates that it would hold roughly 30 grains of black powder, I believe.
No, it was, since it was designed with smokeless, it was 30 grains of smokeless, which burn rate wise was probably right in there with the older IMR 3031, which not really popular anymore. A little faster than Varget. I think they still.
Oh yeah, we just saw some at the store.
My dad used to shoot it in 308 Winchester with some lighter weight kind of match type bullets. It was good for that. Probably also used it in the 3030. But around that burn speed, 30 grains of smokeless propellant and a 30 caliber cartridge, you have the 3030, and then you introduce the 1894. You've got the Marlin 1893 stamped with the 3030 designation, but you have this buildup of, you could go to the store, you can get the firearms, they're quick handling, they're versatile, you can get the cartridges, they're readily available, they shoot well, they perform well, they're not corrosive, and you start to see why it was a no-brainer as a homesteader, as somebody traveling across the West, as somebody that hunted to feed their family. Why would you not want one of those? And that's what created that initial success. I mentioned it previous about the flat shooting. You know, the original loads for the 3030 were like 160 grain bullet, 160 and maybe 165 grain round nose, doing 1,900 feet per second.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
For the times?
For the time. Well, and I suppose, 18, 20-inch barrels. And so you could zero
you remember what the SAMI pressure is on these? It's pretty low, isn't it?
I think it was 48.
Yeah, I was going to say it's around 50,000. That's what I remember. But yeah, that's par for the time period. That's
right.
Like
high performance. Absolutely. Yeah. So you zero this thing in at, say, 100, 150 yards. You have honest 200-yard performance. You're looking at 4, 5, 6 inches of drop at 200. If you're zeroed at about 150.
Yeah.
And yeah, for the guy, for like I said, the people coming west or coming out onto the Great Plains to find a better life, you could have 150, 200-yard performance on deer and antelope. That's a poke when you're shooting buckhorn sights.
Yeah. Well, and then you got to figure too, most of the country, at least half of it going east and then spots of it going west. I mean, you're lucky to get a 200-yard shot.
Oh yeah.
So I could see how it would catch on. You have something that's extremely capable, good enough. So if something else came along too, what's the point?
Ever since I started rifle hunting at the ripe old age of 12, if I go back and look at every rifle deer I've ever shot, 30-30 would have done it no problem.
Oh yeah.
All within 200 yards.
Yep.
And that's eastern central Nebraska,
Yep.
Where, I don't know, there's some places you can shoot far, but it's pretty far and few between those opportunities, and it just doesn't happen like that.
Yep. Versus if
not
you went
where I'm from,
just west of where you're from, it's a wholly different landscape. You get into
it's 400 yards from ridge to ridge.
Yeah.
There's no ridges.
There is no ridges. Yeah, right. So great for that. And the bullets, lead core, those traditional round nose shapes, and the firearms that we've been talking about so far, tubular fed, tube magazines. So you have to retain that round nose shape that you don't detonate the primer that's resting against the bullet inside the tube.
Right.
So that's a very important design aspect. It all changed a little bit with the Savage 99.
Yeah, and that wasn't tube fed. That was magazine fed.
That's a rotary magazine. So
they could go ahead and load spire points in it.
Yeah, so factory ammo, you're going to see those round nose projectiles. But at the time, for the small group of hand loading hobbyists, you could load that thing with a Spitzer shaped bullet. You could go lighter as well. 125 grain bullets, 130 grain bullets were available, in the 20s and 30s time frame.
Even flatter then.
Yep. So the Savage 99, which could deserve its own podcast altogether, and in my heart, the Savage 99 should be chambered in the 250 3000. But the 30-30, another very popular combination because of all the things we've already mentioned. Fast handling, accurate, reliable, affordable, especially, when we're going back 100 years. Affordability was a big concern, and quality. And you got it all with a lot of these rifles that we're talking about, the 1893, the 1894, the Marlin 336, the Savage 99. You really couldn't ask for much more for a centerfire cartridge.
Yeah, especially at the time. I think what's kind of remarkable is that it is known as a lever action cartridge, right? That's its thing. You think Dirty Harold, and they cock lever action. It's great, but there's a lot of other platforms that it's been used in over the years.
All of them, right?
Yeah, all of them. I mean, especially it was a big thing with silhouette shooting and like guys that had the TC contenders and all the switch barrels and all that stuff. In a single shot, you can load obviously whatever you want in it.
Yeah, for single shot hand loaders.
You could have polymer tip bullets loaded in there. And, they'll shoot them off the side of their leg and it rams at 500 yards. And, that's kind of cool.
That was, definitely seen a popularity increase there and a bunch of wildcatting. But as far as rifles go, Savage did their pump action years ago, their Model 170 pump action. And, it's been in probably every conceivable type of action since then.
Yeah, I can't remember what year Winchester, they tried it in a bolt action. It was kind of a decided failure, though, unfortunately. But just because a guy that's going to go out back then and buy a bolt action, and this is decades after it's introduced, right?
Yeah.
There's other options that fit a bolt action better. Why would you hamstring yourself?
Yeah. They did that on their Model 54. Yeah, and I could see why. If the 30-06 is available, and in the 50s you get the 308 available, and you had the 6mm craze and the 25 caliber craze in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
270.
Yeah,
there was 6 as a whole.
Make a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's better suited to the lever action, maybe more out of nostalgia. But those rimmed cartridges out of a tube magazine, they feed so well. Everybody's got all the kinks ironed out. Now fast forward 125 years, that it is at home in a lever gun. But Preston, you brought up the TC line, like the TC contenders. There was that huge rise in popularity in, silhouette shooting and handgun hunting.
And guys that wanted to hand load and do kind of not normal things that you'd find in a factory box. They'd love to get those contender barrels and just play.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm not sure on current production, but it wasn't that long ago I saw a BFR. Magnum Research had their BFRs in 30-30.
Yep, they could get them in a 30-30, you can get them in, I think, a 45-70, all the cool ones.
Yeah. Well, in the 30-30, in regard to power, even out of a handgun, you still got plenty of horsepower to take any of your game animals at the traditional ranges.
Mm-hmm. Now, maybe we should talk about recoil a little bit too. If memory serves right, it's kind of in between, like if you're a shotgun shooter, it's kind of in between a 410 and a 20 gauge.
Yep.
Really not bad at all. Maybe a little bit more than a 243 Winchester because it's got the heavier bullet.
Yeah.
Larger diameter, but we're back in the powder. But this rifle here, that's got a nice butt pad.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say 1894 with a metal plate in your collarbone. Not interested.
They're not bad. It's kind of like, to me, I look at it kind of the same way I do the 6 Arc. It's kind of like, or the 6.5 Grendel even. It's kind of a moderate cartridge that does all you need it to do, and nothing else. And yeah, that's nice. I mean, that's one of the main benefits that
it's not going to beat you up.
Yeah, that I go for some of those smaller cartridges for, is that the recoil is extremely manageable.
Mm-hmm. That's an important aspect of it too. Now, we talked about it, but now we can kind of dive into it a little bit. The hand loader. So the hand loader has huge variety now. At the time, 150, 160 round noses were what you're going to get out of a factory ammo. But then with bullet design changing, the ability to hand load Spitzer-shaped bullets if you were in a rotary magazine or single shot. But then as the hand loader today, those days of doing 1,800, 1,900 feet per second with modern propellants, you can actually, within safe SAMI pressure limits, still get some really high performance out of a 150 round nose, maybe a 170 flat point for something a little bit tougher. There's a lot of meat on the bone with modern propellants.
The HIT Target Impact Indicator. Instant hit confirmation at extended ranges has never been easier. The HIT Target Impact Indicator easily attaches to most target stands and not the steel target itself. The highly sensitive internal accelerometer detects vibration when the target is impacted, activating the red LED lights that flash Morse code for HIT. Where impact confirmation can be difficult, light it up with the HIT Target Impact Indicator from Hornady.
Yeah, well, you can't forget the FTX either.
Yeah, well, even before we get into that, even with a 150 interlock, and this is at SAMI pressure, this is a 20-inch barrel, so shorter than 24, maybe not as short as a carbine, but some of these powders are getting you 2,300 feet per second out of a 150 grain bullet.
Yep. So the original propellant used a single-based extruded propellant, safe, effective, but now we've got double-based propellants, spherical propellants with nitroglycerin content to really juice up the energy potential within a given pressure. So powders like Winchester 748.
Every one of these here has is a double-based, I believe, but Winchester 748. H335.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are going to be your
CFE
high velocity
223
ones.
would work well in there. You've got BLC2 comes to mind. You've got some really high energy content type propellants that are going to give you really good velocity out of a classic cartridge at standard pressure. And then from a bullet standpoint, that 170 grain flat point, if you were going to take a bigger, tougher animal, or you wanted to maybe black bear something like that, the 170 grain bullet doing 1,800, maybe 2,000 feet per second is no joke.
The majority of the powders there actually get you 2,100.
Wow.
Yeah, one of them gets you 2,200. That one being LeverEvolution.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's a nice segue.
That is a nice segue. So you've got your classic 150 grain, maybe 160 grain round nose, your 170 grain flat points. Well, our former ballistic scientist, Dave Emery, was a lever gun enthusiast, to say the least. And it's because of his enthusiasm for lever action firearms and the iconic cartridges that they're chambered in that we have the LeverEvolution line of ammunition, like here in this box if you're watching. LeverEvolution was Dave Emery's brainchild of how can I maximize the performance of a traditional cartridge. Sammy's got the pressure limit cap, so I can't add pressure. We've got modern propellants. Let's take advantage of them. Well, how can I extend the range and the capability if I can't change the pressure and the velocity much? You change the shape of the bullet. Let the bullet do the work. And he was able to develop a Spitzer-shaped bullet, long ogive bullet. Some of them have boat tails. They really hang on to velocity really well, but they have a polymer tip, the flex tip technology, that will not detonate the primer in front of it inside of a tubular magazine like a traditional lead spire point or polymer tipped bullet like the SST would do. So this technology allowed us to extend the range of your effectiveness by 50 to 100 yards, sometimes further, just by opting for a new bullet shape. And that, to me, is pretty remarkable.
Yep. Yeah, you could think of the tip almost as squishy. Right?
Yeah, it's an elastomer.
It's soft.
Would you call that, when you were going to mechanical engineering school
Mm-hmm.
and you went through like material properties class, did they use squishy?
Squishy? Yeah, that's a technical term.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not.
It was never said?
I don't think so. No, it's an elastomer is what the material is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is squishy.
Yeah.
Nerd alert.
Well, I push it on the table and it squishes.
It does squish.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. But that design, none of us were here for that. But Miles, you've been part of some groundbreaking bullet design technology. And
yeah, that technology is definitely not limited just to tubular magazines. Like, there's a lot of really cool.
Well, that's where I was going with. Is I wanted you
to
talk about the terminal performance that is allowed because of that material.
Right. So yeah, like your exposed lead round noses and stuff, you run into the same, really similar velocity thresholds. You can design the bullet to lower that minimum terminal velocity threshold a little bit. And then like our hard polymer tips, we're kind of stuck in that 17 to 1900 foot per second range for minimum expansion velocity. And that's kind of across our product line. Different, ELDXs and SSTs are a little different from each other that way. But generally, that's kind of the cutoff. But when you're starting off at 2200 foot per second, you kind of don't have far to go before you hit that window, right?
Yeah,
and
1800 feet per second.
Yeah, most of these bullets aren't like the FTXs are better, but they're still not as sexy as like our ELDMs and stuff. We just don't have the room to put the ogive and boat tail on them like we would with those bullets.
And make them feed.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of run into that issue where basically you need something in there to lower the minimum expansion velocity, and those elastomer tips has opened up a whole new world of R&D for us in a lot of different applications. It ended up going into like critical duty and a whole bunch of other places. But
and Subsonic.
Sub X, as well. And so what you can do with that is really drastically lower the minimum expansion velocity. We can obviously we can get them as low as 800 foot per second. So. And there's some bullets that we have that will hold together as high as 2,000 foot per second, and then still expand down below subsonic. Like there's a couple I can think of that we haven't even really found the limit yet. So haven't cared to because it's so far
downrange.
Yeah, it's like
so all because of the squishy tip.
Yeah,
which is remarkable. So the LeverEvolution, Dave designed that line of ammo and that bullet to extend the capabilities, modernize these traditional cartridges. He did it with lead core bullets, but it's also available in a monolithic bullet. So where I see this being such an amazing advancement, you've got your classic 1894, and you want to use it on something like, say, a black bear. Well, you can choose a monolithic bullet. This line is called the Monoflex bullet in LeverEvolution. You get this rugged bullet, purpose-built to expand at the velocities your rifle will produce, and it's going to hold together for 90, 95, maybe 99% weight retention through hide, through bone. That's going to penetrate for quartering shots. Yeah. It really opens up a big window should you want to use this cartridge on something a little bigger and tougher than, say, a pronghorn.
Yeah. And usually with those bullets, the only thing you lose for weight retention is the tip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
Yeah. No, I'm continually impressed by that. The Monoflex and then even our CX line of bullets for the terminal performance side of things. They're one of our more consistent. I guess they're all consistent performing, but like consistently deep penetrating, hold together weight retention bullets.
Well, and what I like about opting for a monolithic bullet, and this is coming from a dyed-in-the-wool lead core bullet fan. I'm an ELDX fan for a lot of reasons. Well, the more and more and more I shoot CXs, Monoflexes, what I like that it gives me is shot presentation. I am not afraid to take a quartering two shot or a quartering away shot because I know that bullet's going in a straight line exactly where I want it to the tune of 30, 36 inches of penetration.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is like a safety net, if you will.
Right. Yep. And then I think the only drawback there is if you do get a straight through and there's a herd of animals, you got to be a little conscious there.
Well, there's always, there's implications for every choice you make, and that is certainly one of them. And I would, avoid those shots even with a lead core bullet.
Right.
I always noticed, even back in the phone call days, the thing that I always was slightly puzzled about, but I guess truly I don't really care about that much, is that even though it's 20 grains lighter, that Monoflex, factory ammunition and hand-loaded ammunition is going to run you about the same velocity. So you might think, well, I'll use the 160. I've got higher energy. Just remember that these bullets are acting entirely different. And if there's a reason that you want to use the Monoflex bullet, it's probably a good reason. Don't switch over to the FTX necessarily because, I've got more energy with it. No. You're going to get the penetration with this. You're going to get the high weight retention. It's
tougher. Nice. They're a tougher bullet.
Yeah,
solid. And it's monolithic copper. You can't get away from that.
The Hornady Rapid Safe Keypad Vault offers quick, dependable access to your firearm while providing security from unauthorized users. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault is constructed of a heavy-duty 14-gauge steel housing and thick steel lid for tamper-proof security. The included RFID watch band tag and RFID decal can be selectively programmed to open this safe and any other Rapid Safe you own. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault from Hornady Security.
Not countercultural, but like there's a lot of dogma about heavy for caliber. And when you switch to a material that is tougher, but not as dense as lead, then it's, I'm freaking out because it's lighter. How is it tougher? But it's just not as dense.
They punch above their weight class.
Yes, they do. Yep. Like Canelo Alvarez. All right. So
yeah, that guy.
Yeah, my last piece of ammo I want to talk about before we kind of move into some Wildcat stuff here. Subsonic. You want to talk about punching above your weight class? Subsonic ammo? Are you kidding me? Obviously, check your state and local regulations for hunting. The Sub X bullet that you designed specifically now for 30-30, and we have a full lineup of subsonic ammo, but for the 30-30, 175 grain bullet doing 1,050 feet per second at the muzzle, below the speed of sound. A lot of these modern manufactured 30-30s will come with a threaded barrel,
which is kind of awesome.
Dude.
I mean, it's some people might complain about it, and a part of me wants to complain about it.
We'll have one
but
of
it's
each.
Pretty awesome.
Have your 94 that's classic, and then have the 336 all blacked out with the threaded barrel, and your suppressor on there. Shoot this subsonic. Miles, talk to us about that design, because I've been blown away with the terminal performance capabilities on something that feels like a pellet gun when it goes off.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's the main point with it, right? If you suppress, I mean even unsuppress the subsonic, there's less gas produced and less muzzle exit pressure, so it's quieter than a normal,
supersonic
full
round.
house supersonic round. But when you suppress that, the lever actions, bolt actions, anything that solidly locks up like that, I mean that's like you said, it's a pellet gun. It's like
uber quiet.
Yeah, it's giggly, make you smile, quiet. But yeah, that bullet is designed to expand, get as much frontal surface area as we can down to 800 foot per second, which equates to further than you can, probably account for it with these sight setups.
That's a unique thing there. And I'm glad you brought that up. The subsonic flight characteristics, the oncoming air isn't creating as much drag on the bullet. So although you launch at 1,050 feet per second, it doesn't decay velocity like a supersonic round because there's not as much drag.
Yeah. Once you go supersonic, you're pushing air molecules out of the way, and that robs a ton of energy from you. So where you might shoot something like a Creedmoor at 2,700 foot per second at the muzzle by 200 yards, it's probably, 2,300 foot per second, just spitballing. But you lose 4 or 5, you use a percentage, a significant percentage of your velocity over the first, couple hundred yards.
Mm-hmm.
With a subsonic bullet, you lose maybe 100 or 200 foot per second over that same distance.
So if you're at 1,050 at the muzzle, shoot a deer at 100 yards, you're going to be doing 950 to 1,000 feet per second.
Right.
And so you start shooting, these bullets will perform down to 800 or so. That's way further than you need to be shooting with this, and certainly further than I think the capabilities of the platform are as far as accuracy and dispersion.
Well, and the problem you run into is that these are much slower, so you get much more curved trajectory. And so you just got to know what the limitations of that are. Go play with it first, because, the difference, with a supersonic load from 0 at 100, 150, shoot at 200, no problem. With a subsonic load, 0 at 100 yards, shoot at 200, your feet
0 at 50, shoot it maybe to 100.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and there's still going to be some compensation if you 0 at 50 and need to shoot something at 100.
I think the best setup generally with these subsonics is limit your shots to 100 yards, thereabout, and 0 at about 75 yards. And that gives you kind of the best point blank range.
Okay. Well, again, check your local and state regulations for energy requirements if they have any or anything like that. But where you can use it, that subsonic ammo, these Sub-X bullets, even in the 30-30 and anything else they're offered in, they will impress you with their level of terminal performance on deer, antelope, pigs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Speaking of these newfangled rounds and guns with threaded barrels and whatnot, we maybe should mention that today you can still get 30-30s brand new from Henry, Mossberg, Marlin,
Oh, there's a bunch more coming.
Savage,
Wesson, yeah,
they're all over the place.
But yeah, there's anybody that makes a lever action, they're making a 30-30. Be foolish not to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the last shifting of the gears here on this podcast. One of the things that ignites all of us is tinkering. We all like to do that. Miles is probably the chief tinkerer of the tinker crew. And hater's going to hate, gator's going to gate, wildcatter's going to wildcat. That 30-30 comes out, you're going to play around with it. And again, right away, you have the 25-35, which is fantastic. The 32 Winchester Special. I mean, there's been a ton of wildcatting over the years, to include a Ackley version, which
he did it.
He is probably unnecessary. I don't know how much benefit you'd get there, but
100 foot per second.
You might.
That's pretty,
at the time, though. It's
pretty standard.
Pre-LeverEvolution, pre-FTX. That might be a big deal.
Yep. And then, Preston, you mentioned earlier the silhouette shooting. So that became more popular. So then you have these single shot barrels that you can swap your barrels out. And so if they've all got the same case head, great. So you've got
just about anything.
730 Waters is, you had the 7mm version.
And the 730 Waters was a Wildcat for a long, long, long time until it became an actual cartridge.
Real cartridge. Yeah. You had the 7 International rimmed. And then you've got some radical, I'm going to call it radical, usage of the case. Look at the 219 zipper.
Mm-hmm.
That little sucker. Super cool. And then modern day, cartridges like the old 360 Buckhammer from Remington.
Just came out.
Yep. So still using that same kind of parent, the old 30 Winchester centerfire.
Well, and not to mention they necked it down to every caliber out there.
Yeah. So you look at different time frames. So you have the 30-30. Well, in the 30s, you had the 25 cal craze. And then in the late 40s into the 50s, you had the 6mm craze, and then a 6.5, 270. So in those chunks of, you can just follow the timeline there of what was popular at the time. You have a 30-30 variant.
Yeah, and in the silhouette with the shorter contender barrels, the 30 Harriet and the 357 Harriet, the 30 Harriet, they actually brought the shoulder back, reduced powder capacity, and it actually did just as well as the 30-30, the full house at those barrel lengths.
Yeah, 16-inch barrels and such.
Did just as good with them with less recoil, so that's why they kind of did that.
Yeah, 12.
Then of course the 357 Harriet came out. All sorts of things got made off of it,
and that's what I think is cool about our industry. Not like us working at Hornady, but like maybe not industry, but the community of firearm devoted people and hobbyists that they're gonna do some tinkering, and that's really cool to see what they can come up with. And
it's we should probably start like a little betting ring, honestly, with our new cartridge introductions, just to see how long it takes to get. We can each pick which caliber we want and
which one's going to be first.
Yeah, which one's going to wind up on the forums first as a Wildcat.
I'm guessing it's going to be. I don't. We're not going to.
We won't
for another time.
Yeah. Well, guys, the 30-30, an iconic staple, a piece of history. Go out and get you one if you don't have one already. It is more than capable for the hefty majority of, medium-sized game hunting that goes on, certainly in the eastern part of the United States, but largely a lot of other places too. And it's just one of those cartridges that, for good reason, will never go away, and nor should it.
Yep, big fan. Although I don't have one, I've talked with a sales gal, and hopefully we'll make that happen.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. You've got a connection.
I need to follow up.
Okay. Miles, thanks for your insight on this and the technical stuff on the Sub X and the LeverEvolution terminal performance side of things. Preston, appreciate you being on the podcast. Anything else that you guys want to leave the listeners with?
Thanks for watching.
Mm-hmm. Simple as that.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to this episode about the iconic 30-30, the 30 WCF. We appreciate you listening. We'll catch you on the next one.